it's me, Jimmer Fredette.
Jimmer Fredette. The name might not ring a bell now, but back in the day, there was a time when he owned the entire basketball world.
Over Nolan. Oh! It's time again! Way downtown. Bang! Bang! Oh, what a
Get fast forward to today, and he can't even get an NBA contract.
And every time I'd come over half court, he'd be like, I'm going to set you a screen. Just shoot it. Just shoot it.
Back in 2011, Jimmer Fredette put together one of the most incredible scoring runs in college basketball history, dropping 40 pieces like it's nothing, and Jimmer Mania was hitting like crack. He went from a regular college baller to a mainstream celebrity overnight. But long before he became a mainstream celebrity, Jimmer was a baby bro in a family of 3, except for one major difference. He had an unmatched passion for sports, especially basketball. So much that his older bro, TJ, couldn't believe it at times. At 4 years old, Jimmer was more determined and competitive than anyone he'd seen. And at just 5 years old, he was already dropping three-pointers and pulling off moves to evade his older opponents. It became clear from early on that this kid was going to be special. I mean, what other 5-year-olds do basketball drills in their free time? Fast forward to high school, Jimmer was tearing it up and was one of the best scoring guards in the whole country. He was Glens Falls High School's all-time leading scorer and 16th on New York's all-time scoring list with a whopping 2,404 points. Plus, he had 12 40-point games in his senior season alone. But even with all that talent, the big shot basketball powers didn't really give him much attention. Despite shattering high school records, Jimmer only got offers from 12 different schools before ultimately committing to Brigham Young University. Little did BYU realize this was the best decision they've ever made. Jimmer came into BYU all fired up to prove everyone wrong. He had worked tirelessly his entire life just to get overlooked by almost every college in the country. And as a freshman, Fredette was already averaging 7 points per game. Fast forward to his sophomore year and he was already averaging 16 points, 4 assists per game. Plus, he was draining threes like a boss at 38%. But it wasn't until junior year that the whole nation sat up and took notice. In his junior year, Jimmer went beast mode against Arizona and dropped an absurd 49 points. Then, just a few months later, he went off again, this time scoring 45 points against TCU. By then, Jimmy had built a strong enough profile for himself to go straight to the NBA, but he decided to stay at BYU and play his senior year. And this is where things really start to get wild. In his senior year in January 2011, Jimmy went wild with a season-high 47 points against Utah, including a buzzer beater from 40 feet out at halftime. And just when people thought it couldn't get crazier, Jimmer faced his toughest competition yet, Kawhi Leonard. In a showdown in front of 22,000 people against the undefeated San Diego State, Jimmer played the best basketball of his life. In a game that wasn't even supposed to be close, Jimmer scored a jaw-dropping 43 points en route to a 71-58 victory. And that's when Jimmer Mania officially took over. Jimmer took the world by storm. The attention was pouring in like a tidal wave. Everybody was glued to their screens watching this kid hit 40-foot bombs and nailing buzzer beaters like it's a frickin' weekly ritual. Before Stephen Curry was lighting the world on fire, Jimmer Fredette was that guy. But the craziness didn't stop there. In a game against New Mexico, Jimmer broke BYU's career scoring record held by Danny Ainge. That same game, he went on to set BYU's single-game scoring record with a stunning 52 points. He was on fire and basically single-handedly carried BYU to the Sweet 16 for the first time since 1981. Hence, it shouldn't come as a surprise that Fredette took National Player of the Year honors. With a crazy average of 28.9 points per game, there wasn't another player who even came close to Jimmer Fredette. The hype surrounding Fredette was getting to be Michael Jordan or Kobe Bryant level. He was so popular that fans even coined the verb Jimmered. Essentially, whenever a team got wrecked by him, fans would say they got Jimmered. Jimmer wasn't just a college student anymore, he was a straight-up celebrity. Even KD himself had to tweet calling him the best scorer in the world. And better yet, President Obama couldn't resist giving props, saying Jimmer's talent was unbelievable. But then again, a lot of NBA scouts didn't feel the same sort of way about Jimmer Fredette. While a handful believed he would rock the NBA with his shooting skills, many were wondering if he could fit into an NBA system. See, in college, Jimmer's team revolved around him. and he was the master with the rock. But in the big leagues, it's a whole different game. Now the question was whether he could adapt his game to the NBA and play more selflessly. Nonetheless, the Kings believed he could. They traded down to get him at number 10 ahead of Klay Thompson and Kawhi Leonard. Sure, the hype might have bumped him up a little higher than expected, but it was totally worth it for the Kings at the time. Jimmermania hit Sacramento like a storm, and merchandise sales shot through the roof with a 540% increase. Plus, his number 7 Kings jersey sold out entirely in stores and online. When Jimmer made it to the NBA, he landed in this super interesting spot. For one, he was already a big deal thanks to his college superstardom, but in the pros, he found himself chilling on the bench. And that's when things started to take a turn for the worse. As a rookie, Jimmer only played 61 games, averaging 18.6 minutes per game. On top of this, his shooting numbers saw a big decrease. He went from scoring nearly 29 points in college to only 7.6 points in the NBA. With a shooting percentage of 39%, Jimmermania was no longer the same. Fortunately, the 2012-13 season proved to be more kind towards Jimmer Fredette. Despite only averaging 14 minutes per game, Fredette made the most of his opportunity, averaging 42% from beyond the arc and scoring 7.2 per game. Compared to his rookie season, Fredette was more efficient and proved he could be productive with limited minutes. Yet in 2014, the Kings decided to end the Jimmer Fredette experiment prematurely. Midway through the season, they bought him out, and Fredette joined the Chicago Bulls, where his career would go downhill quickly. In 8 games with the Bulls, he only averaged 7 minutes and under 4 shot attempts per game. Fortunately, in the 2014-15 season, the New Orleans Pelicans gave Jimmer Fredette one last chance to prove himself, letting him play in 50 games for 10 minutes per game. Yet, at this point, Fredette's confidence was completely shattered. He only attempted 3.3 shots per game, his fewest to date, and to make matters worse, he averaged a career-low 19% from 3. Put simply, all the things that made him at BYU just weren't clicking in the NBA. And now, his window to contribute was coming to an end. The 2015-16 season marked his second to last season in the NBA, where he'd only play 6 games for 2 different teams. From there, it was off to the D-League to revive his non-existent career. Nonetheless, Fredette made the best of his time with the Knicks D-League team, Westchester Knicks. He played really well in the D-League, but after getting exposed in the NBA, he knew it was time for an alternate route. So Jimmer packed his bags and decided to make a move to Shanghai. Once he made the move, he was a whole different player. He transformed into the CBA's own Kobe Bryant, dropping nearly 40 points a game and even dropping 75 points in one game. For 3 straight seasons spanning from 2016 to 2019, Fredette averaged over 36 points per game. In his time overseas, he won the 2017 MVP award and made 3 consecutive All-Stars. Fortunately, this was enough to buy him a ticket back to the NBA. So following a 3-year absence from the NBA, Fredette made his triumphant return with the Phoenix Suns in March 2019. It wasn't the return he envisioned, but he did get to play 6 games and prolonged his NBA career. However, the return was short-lived and Jimmer went back overseas soon thereafter. This begs the question, what really went wrong for Jimmer Fredette? Now, don't get me wrong, in college basketball, he was an absolute legend. But here's the deal, shooting is too specialized and not unique enough to warrant a place in the NBA. The modern NBA game wants its shooting specialists to be versatile wing players or forwards who can catch and shoot without hogging the ball. And if we're keeping it real, Jimmer's college shooting habits were not made for the big leagues. He is used to shooting the ball way too much. Like some nights back at BYU, he was taking more shots than the whole team combined. Well, that worked in college, sure, but the NBA is a different beast. To make it there, he's got to learn to distribute the ball, pick shots wisely, and not go trigger happy. But ultimately, his main disadvantage was his defense. Jimmer's not exactly the tall, lengthy dude who can lock down NBA players on defense. Standing at 6 feet with a 6'4" wingspan, he's had some limitations. Add in not-so-elite athleticism and slow lateral quickness, it was a struggle for him to keep up with opponents. Perhaps that is the real reason Jimmer Fredette didn't last in the NBA. All that to say, the NBA is a totally different game than college basketball. In college basketball, players can dominate competition with elite scoring and shooting. But in the NBA, where everyone can shoot and play good perimeter defense, buckets are much harder to come by. Meanwhile, our most recent video couldn't be easier to come by, so click the video and I'll meet you there.